Loose lips and icing ships, but loose kisses. Take trips to San Francisco, Cisco. Take titty hottie, do it for Scotty, do it for a living and do it for the dead. Do it for the monsters under your bed. Do it for the teens, do it for your mom. Broken hearts hurt, but they make us strong. And we won't stop until somebody calls the cops. And even then we'll start again and just pretend that nothing ever happened.
Hey guys, this is Christina coming to you all with my July wrap-up and August TBR. So if you would like to know the books I was able to read for the past month and the books I plan on reading for this month, stay tuned. I talked a little bit about this book in my previous video, but this book basically is about two main characters, Michael Bloomfisk and Elizabeth Salander. And Michael Bloomfisk is a Swedish journalist, and he is going through a lot right now. I mean, he just lost a trial in which a multi-billionaire businessman sued him for false evidence after Michael wrote an article about how he was misusing his money and how he was taking advantage of people that worked for him, and all of it was true, but he didn't have enough evidence to back up his information because the person who gave him the information basically told him that I will give you this information, but you cannot say that I gave it to you, and if anything happens, then I'm not the one who relayed the information to you. Which I thought that was kind of stupid on his part, because if someone gave me information and told me that if I was to go down or something like that, to not take that person with me, then I would have been like, no, I'm not, whatever, you can take that information to some other sucker, I'm not going to be a part of it. After the trial, he is trying to repair whatever life that he has left after everything that went down. In the midst of this, an older man by the name of Henrik Wenger approaches him and asks him to take on a 40-year mystery case of the disappearance of his niece, Harriet Wenger. Henrik Wenger basically hires Michael for 1 year and says, I want you to work on this case, reopen it for 1 year, despite whatever evidence comes up. Even if you don't solve the case, I will pay you a couple of millions of dollars, and I will help you in the case that you just lost, and I will help you win it. So it's all too good to be true. I mean, first of all, a couple of $1 million to help solve a case, whether he solves it or not, that's pretty awesome. So he's kind of skeptical at first, but he ends up taking on the case. And while taking on the case, he gets introduced to a lady named Elizabeth Salander. Elizabeth is not your typical teenage girl. She is very secluded. She doesn't talk to a lot of people, and she's been through the system as far as her mother hasn't been taking care of her because her mother has problems of her own, and they never really mentioned her father, but she's been through the system, and she has dealt with a lot of stuff. But despite her dealing with a lot of stuff, she's a very smart and intellectual person. She has a photographic memory, and she really pays attention to detail. So all of that really helps Michael in solving the case of Harriet Wenger. And within this book, there are a lot of dark subjects as far as rape and sodomy and just a lot of dark, really dark subjects. So that was something to deal with. But despite all of that, this was a phenomenal novel. This is the first book in the trilogy, and I do plan on reading the other two books, but as some of you all might know or might not know, this book took me a while to read or even to get adjusted to because it was so dry and boring in the beginning. But after, I want to say maybe 50 or 60 pages, I started to really get into it, and I'm so glad that I decided to give this book another chance. And if you're like me and you put this book down because you thought that you couldn't read it, I highly recommend to just try it one more time because this is an amazing novel. It has mystery, it has drama, love, family drama in it, so I mean, it makes for a really great novel. And this is my first adult mystery novel, so I'm pretty psyched that this is my first one because it was so amazing. Now this is gonna seem pretty weird because there are two books within a book, and this is just a Writer's Digest version. So I guess what they do is they just put two books that are the same genre or deal with similar subjects and then just put it in a book. I don't know if they even sell these anymore. I got this at a flea market, so that's that. But the two books are Rainwater by Sandra Brown and The Girl Who Chased the Moon by Sarah Addison Allen. And I believe, Troy, I think you recommended this to me, and if you did, thank you so much, because I absolutely love this book. But I don't thank you for recommending me a book that made me tear up at the end. This book was so good, but so sad. I hated afterwards. I was like, oh my gosh. But then it was like, I knew it had to happen, so. But anyway, this book was set in 1934, and it centers around the Depression era. And the main character is Ella Barron, and she is a tenant. She runs this Texas building house, and she takes care of about 5 or 6 people in the house. So she, cooks the meal, she cleans, all this stuff, while she is also a single mother of a little boy who has an intellectual and a developmental disability. And this guy named David Rainwater just comes into her life and just flips it upside down. So David Rainwater is looking to stay in her house, in her building house, and he needs a place to settle. He is a sick man, and not like bad sick, but he is sick, and he's trying to look for a place to, settle and just calm down and, just enjoy life. One thing that I really love about David Rainwater and that I love about Sandra Brown is that she didn't make this a typical romance novel. David Rainwater actually cares about Ella's child, who has an intellectual and developmental disability, and David brings something out of that child that's just, it's so amazing and it's so beautiful, and I really love it. One thing that I also admire about this book is that this book deals with racial tension. Like I said, this book was centered around in 1930s, and as you all know, during the Depression era, there was a lot of stuff going on as far as racial inequality goes, and that this book touches a lot of that. I don't know if you all hear, yeah, you probably hear that. That's my other dog. I'm just gonna keep talking. Yeah, it deals with racial tension, and it deals with romance, and it is a coming of age story in a sense, and I really love this novel. I gave it a 5 out of 5 on Goodreads. If you want to read my review, I have my Goodreads account listed down below. You can, read what I said. I basically said what I just told you all right now, but I put a little bit of extra information in there. But this is just an amazingly written novel, and I recommend anyone who is into romance or who is into historically fiction novels to read this. The next book is The Girl Who Chased the Moon, and this is probably more of a coming of age story. This centers around 2 main characters. You have Emily Benedict and Julia Winterstern, and Emily Benedict is a teenager who is moving back to North Carolina after her mother died in a tragic car accident. She ends up moving in with her 8-foot-tall grandfather in her mother's old room. A lot of weird stuff starts happening. The wallpaper in her room starts changing. She starts seeing flashes of light in the forest, and people aren't really approaching her or being as nice to her, just based off of who her mother used to be when she lived in North Carolina. And the sad thing about it is no one wants to tell her about who her mother once was, or the reason why there's so much conflict between her family and the family of her mother's old flame. Julia Winterstone has moved back to California way before Emily Benedict did, and she has moved back after her father died, and she is basically taking over his barbecue business. He ran a small, little barbecue store, shop, place, restaurant, and she has to work there to pay off his debt so that she can sell the place and she can move back to where she originally stayed. And Julia's dream is to make a bakery because she loves to cook, but she finds it difficult because she has to take care of her father's debt. She has to move back to a place that she didn't really want to live, because when she used to live in North Carolina, she was the outcast. She didn't get along with that many people. She had a strained relationship with her father. a really bad relationship with her stepmother, and she also had some difficulties with a boy that she fell in love with when she was in high school. And one thing that I really admire about this book is that there are two characters that are on different spectrums as far as life goes, but they are both dealing with some of the similar things as far as finding out, like figuring out their past and sorting it all out in the present and trying to figure out who they want to be in the future. One thing that I didn't like about this book is that I felt like the author left a lot of stuff out. I felt like she could have solved a lot of my questions, but she didn't, and I felt like this book could have been a little bit longer and it wouldn't have been too strung out, because there are some things that the author explained but she didn't go into the detail. It's like she put them in the novel and then she went on to something else, and I'm like, wait a minute, you could have explained this in a little bit more detail. But I guess for the sake of, I don't know, pages, she just didn't want to go into detail, but I felt like she could have, and it would have still been a phenomenal novel. I ended up giving it a 3.8 out of 5, but as you all know, you can't really do decimals when you're rating books on Goodreads, so I just went ahead and rounded it out to a 4 out of 5. I still really loved the book, and I would definitely reread it again. So I only have 3 books that I want to read in August. My classes don't start until the very last week of the month of August, so I don't really have to worry about not finding enough time to read. But just in case, I just wanted to make it easy on myself and just read 3 novels. So one of the first books that I plan on reading in August that I'm reading at this moment is Smokescreen by Sandra Brown. This is another Sandra Brown novel. Then I want to read The Plain Truth by Jodi Picoult, Her Mother's Shadows by Deanne Chamberlain, and if I can fit in a 4th novel, I will, and I'll just choose Cellophane by Marie Arana. I was reading this a little bit in the beginning of August, didn't enjoy it that much. It was pretty confusing, but if I do get around to reading this, and I'll try to fit this in the month of August, but don't hold me to it. So that's pretty much it. If you all have any questions, leave them in the comment section down below. Let me know what books you plan on reading or any books that you enjoyed reading for the month of July. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.